really fucking cool.
I'm gonna
Uh,
get you recording here.
oh yeah.
Um,
Oh, sorry.
okay, now
Talk.
we're recording. Yeah, man. Oh, dude, you've like, yeah. So you were the Wilcock book came about through your work on the Realist archive when you
Yes.
part of the
Yeah.
digitization. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, I became friends. I had a couple cool things online and elsewhere, and I became friends with Paul Krassner, and that was fucking terrific. And he trusted me with I had a I think I just have a website that doesn't really, it's got a bunch of really weird stuff on it, but the most impacting is this section called Comics with Problems, and I think Paul liked it. Not sure, but he trusted me, and he allowed me to put all the realist stuff there. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think actually working on Paul's realist archive was brought about by Robert Anton Wilson, but because I started it right after uh, Raw had died. Never
Mhm.
got to meet him or talk with him. I feel a little sad about that. But anyway, I was working on the realist for a long time and got it done and mentioned how much I was enjoying one of the writers from it, which was John Wilcock's stuff.
Mm.
And lo and behold, John and I are talking, and this guy in his 80s suddenly decides just to. We were talking about doing a biography comic, and he's just like, all right, I'll stop by. And I'm in Austin. He's in Ojai, California. He just drives straight out the door, shows up in Austin. We figure out a timeline. And it was just the coolest opportunity to meet somebody who had been that was kind of John's role in pushing culture around.
Mm.
And he just wasn't given his due, although he did get, I think near the end of his life, he started to get due again. You get undone. You
Mhm.
get your due, you
Yeah.
get undone, and you get a do-over or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah. Second due. So kind of you get
Yeah,
a
you
do
do up.
a
Yeah,
do
do.
do.
Yeah, some people, yeah, but if you do constant do, you become like empty, like duped.
You get duped. A
Yeah,
big empty can of
yeah,
duped.
yeah, mountain duped.
Well, so you mentioned how John is, this kind of engine of the counterculture in many ways, right? So where
Right.
did he get his start? Like
It's pretty cool. It's pretty
yeah.
cool. He co-founded the Village Voice in a very funny way, but he actually got his start um working for a bunch of British tabloid papers in the 50s and 40s, and he moved to Canada, and he became an interviewer of a bunch of Hollywood people, and then he decided to move to Greenwich Village in 1954 when it was probably exciting. You
Mhm.
talk about, like, can you imagine? You can't have, there's no chance, I think, for small cities or small communities to exist anymore because people, this sounds again like tech complaint, but they just put their cities out. If I was like, what is Greenwich Village like right now, I would just go and I would find a bunch of permanent web cameras. I would find a bunch of people doing stories. I could virtually download it onto my VR headset and walk around
Mhm.
in it. Yeah, I can. Because there's like a YouTube VR channel right now where you can just upload like three-dimensional experiences and stuff. And our brains don't know that that is not real.
Mm.
But in terms of actually going to Greenwich Village in the 40s or 50s and risking being in that place, being maybe not surviving in that space. Maybe your brain doesn't survive because somebody cuts you down in a certain way, or maybe you fall into hard drugs, or um, I don't know, maybe you don't like the way it smells. Maybe somebody thinks you're an uptight asshole and tells you to get the fuck out. You don't access that town, or you're brought into it, and you're in this small village, literally. I mean, what is it, like 7 fucking square blocks or something? It's very small, and you incubate and Bob Dylan pops out of it. you know,
Mhm.
because but
I mean, as do so many others as well,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
all the way
I'm
up
sorry.
through the 90s, even I'd say, right? When
Yeah,
artists kind of they knew that the village was the place to go to kind of like pop off. You
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. There used to be
know?
East Village Radio, which was really cool too, which was just like a radio station on the sidewalk there. But
Great radio station. Yeah, I mean, it's on the Bowery, right?
okay, which is
Was it?
even crazier, which is
Mhm,
even more insane history, you
mhm.
know. And I've got like a friend who's in his 70s or 80s now, and he was actually homeless in the Bowery in the 60s, and he has some incredible stories that are like frightening. But that the history of that thing going back to whenever, I don't know, 20s or 30s, or yeah, wild stuff. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never been to the Bowery, so yeah, so I would have to download it for my YouTube.
yeah. You would need to look at only virtual. You can only look at virtual reality, augmented reality of the
That's
Bowery back then.
probably all
Today,
condos
the
now, right?
Bowery is amazingly. Well, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but yeah, it's completely like shiny. Luxury condos have like totally blown up right when you get off the the bridge, right
Wow.
into Manhattan right there. It's so
Yeah.
wild how things just shift and change. Like the physical environment just totally shifts and changes. You know what I mean? Like,
Money. And now people expect it to be, we I don't know. I have some criticisms about the current culture. Like now somebody's like, well, I'm going to complain about it online if I don't have a good experience somewhere. And I have
mm,
power as like an online speaker. No, it's so much better to fucking be like, this shit is unfair. Fuck you. And I'm just going to like be okay with it and adjust to it. But I'm going to grow as a fucking human and go through my problems. This shit is unfair. Yes, that is so much better than like, I'm going to tell I'm gonna tell on you. We have a bunch of infants. Yeah. The more I'm thinking about it, fuck it. This generation is fucked. It needs like nuke them. But there's
well, it's a hard moment, right? I mean, this is because as we're growing and dealing with life, and the chaos of life as it's still a struggle to like get a grip, and things are more chaotic than ever, right? And so
true.
the thought of like, I mean, I remember when I think back to being like a youngin or whatever, there was only a few that were out there doing the stuff that I thought was cool then too, so
Right.
there's always that sort of segment of the population, that all age groups, that just seem to be total idiots. You know what I mean? So the
Yeah. Yeah.
temptation is to look at them, at the idiots, and think that they're representative of the whole group. You know what I mean? Like,
You
I
you
think
you
they're
make a
struggling to come to grips with this new turn in the media that, it's so weird. It was more tactile. We had to be physically there. It was word of mouth, and you had to, but now it does seem like you could just virtually upload what it was like back then, but there's something missing, that
yeah.
certain quality is missing.
Yeah, you make a fantastic point. I might be duped. I might not be seeing it because I'm just like seeing like these things and frustrated by it and thinking I might be out of the loop. There might be a fantastic secondary subculture that is just there and they're operating with their own rules and everything. Um, I Yeah, you make a very good point. It's something to think about too. I wonder. I mean, there's a couple things. One, I don't think kids read. Uh, and I don't mean to be a dick, but like that's a fucking big one. Like it's people are proudly stupid, like somebody will post something, they'll be like, what's a book? And everyone's like, ha ha ha, you know. It's pretty fucking tough to read, um because you have no cues too. You got to wade through it. But okay, so speaking of reading, so yeah, John came to New York in the 50s, and he basically had an idea for a community newspaper, which became the Village Voice. And
Mm,
so it was sort of his idea that there be local reporting, um, and hyper specific, hyper local reporting was sort of one of his contributions to our world, right? And he kind of got fucked over by Norman Mailer and other people related to the Village Voice.
They all co-founded it together, right? It was
Well, yeah. So he basically put up a postcard in a bookshelf in a bookstore saying, with the idea for the Village Voice. Can you imagine how funny it would be if somebody just was like, go back to like 2001, 2002, somebody goes into a bookstore and goes, looking to create YouTube, contact me if interested, right? And so what would happen? A couple of wealthy people would contact him, and they would be known as like the founders of YouTube. But he'd be like, I put the fucking thing up, and they're like, well, we paid for it. So now we're YouTube and we're going to sell it to Google. And yeah, you can tell people that you fucking had a role in it, but it's our money. So that's the unfair truth that continues forever.
Is that what happened with Wilcock? Is
It's
that what
exactly
Robert
what
Mailer
happened.
did?
Yeah. There was they got
Damn.
one writer from The Nation to help with them, Dan Wolfe, and then it was Ed Fancher and Jerry Talmer had a little money, and Norman Mailer had a little money, and they bought the paper, and so it was like their paper, and John was a nosy person, and he had a really cool column called The Village Square, which basically was even more hyper local and pretty damn funny. He walked around the village and like that would be his column. So it'd be some like one column might be, I don't know, like a bunch of people were playing hopscotch outside. Who won? Let me know, and or something like that. But they would also have a political bent to it. And he also would throw parties constantly and connect a lot of people in the village through these parties. And then he left
Was
to
he
go.
living in the village at that time? Would
Oh
you know
yeah,
where he
yeah.
was
But he
living at?
also became, yes, he was. And then he became, did you say he didn't download it from the internet? Is that what you
No,
said?
I'm saying, do you where in the village was he living? Do you know?
Oh,
Or
he
like
had he
roughly?
had two apartments. I can't recall oh shoot. The bookstore was on Sheridan Street, but I
Okay.
can't remember. I think it was adjacent. Um,
Nice. Yeah, I just like to get a mental map in my head. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
was that enough to help you out? Or
Not really.
yeah, I'm terrible at it.
All good, all good.
Yeah, when my wife met me, she was surprised that I thought Helsinki was an Asian city. I'm terrible at that. That's where the internet's great. You can find literally a map for anything on the internet.
Yeah.
Very, very. That's a dope part of the internet. But so John's biography sort of goes from the Village Voice into trying out all these different ideas on really wild papers. Like we mentioned, East Village Radio, that kind of comes from East Village Other in a way,
Okay.
at least spiritually. And East Village Other was like the real breakout, fucking weird paper, all sorts of cartoonists, all sorts of really crazy writers. And he helped with that. And then he
And that
also,
was 1965, right?
sounds right.
Started,
Yeah.
yeah. Because
Yeah, that
that's
sounds
one of
right.
really the first what gets termed the underground newspaper. That's kind of like, would you say that was the original?
It's certainly the realization of a lot of ideas, and a bold kind of, the beginning of including like Black Panther stuff on a cover, things. So just trying out things like, there were certain changes in the obscenity law that made it a lot easier to used to be that if you printed the word fuck, you would get, that book would get you know deemed inappropriate and illegal because there was no uh moral use of the word.
Mhm.
um and times changed, thankfully, to the point where you could, print and discuss sex in a more candid way, and even print pictures of it. So the Tijuana Bibles kind of left, and we suddenly had, really weird papers that started emerging in the late 60s, like Screw and a bunch of other things. And the 70s are just full of pornography, on newsprint pornography. It's really funny to look at that stuff.
Like the underground newspapers.
Yeah, but they became very, very explicit, or, any paper wanted to do whatever it wanted. New York had the Rat. Austin had other people that it had the Rag, but it also sort of contributed to the Rat, and that the same person, Jeff Shiro, was a part of both papers. There were a bunch of cities that had them. And so the comic, it took me 50 minutes to tell you what this is. The comic basically is a retelling of that I drew with Scott, and gives some chronology to most of those papers, John's role in it. And he also participated in it right until he died, which was great. So it's also, relatively fact checked, and it has his consent. And it was the last big project that he was on before he died. So that was really important to me.
Heck yeah, man. It's a great project, man. And to definitely, it's the role that you've placed yourself in as being like a very like noble and needed one right now, because you're so aware of like the influx of information that's just like flooding everyone, and we're caught in this like prison of now in a way. And like,
how do you give a shit about anything right now? Yeah, so that's been my problem.
But you're doing it though, bro. Like
well, thank you.
Yeah,
that makes me feel good. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, especially hearing the story of, it seems like it's a dual story, obviously, right? But and Wilcock's role in the underground newspaper movement, how that was such a huge thing of that counterculture, and then how things, it in many ways it was the forerunner to what the techno utopians of the 90s thought the internet was going to be.
Yeah, that shit was great.
Like this whole notion of decentralized nodes, and everyone communicating, across the borders, whatever, to forward this sort of ethos that the 60s counterculture seemed to be a big part of their whole thing, at least retrospectively. But like you said, though, it's to hear the all these things that have been taken for granted for so long, like that there even were obscenity laws that prevented the word fuck being in print, and then the whole pushback from the counterculture, that was such a huge part of the counterculture in the early 60s, and they won that one, but now here we are today with in the last number of years with the idea of censored speech. And
well, now we're self-censoring. We're telling people to not say shit.
Okay.
And the government doesn't have to do anything.
We'll break that down. Like, what do you mean? Like,
it's just like we become fools. Like, it doesn't matter. If somebody said something like offensive at one point, that was their foolishness to do. But it's like, but it doesn't, it shouldn't. Me trying right now just even describe like the dynamic between two obscure people in two different cities, and realizing that I said, two guys. I have in an interest in caring about everybody, because it's one of the most disingenuous things you can ever say, but I'm a very empathic person. What if somebody ever
you're
says
people person?
Yeah, people are like, you're full of shit. But I try to be sympathetic and caring, and I know that that's really important to people right now. Is to, well, even in an idea, there must be something. There must be a decorated collection of people.
For sure.
But that expectation makes me have to reconfigure my fucking ideas. And it also gives like a certain specialness to certain groups that other groups don't have, and then they can, and unfortunately it just fucks the whole damn thing up. You should be able to earn your space by your ideas, not by I am frustrated when but basically the jump was that you were talking about censorship. The government doesn't need to censor us right now. We're censoring ourselves. And we're fighting about how you talk about something, so nothing's getting said. And you don't see that right now. The thing that's most dangerous is, if I was a young punk, I'm seeing a lot of punks jump into the fucking GOP. Like, you get to have a fucking party being like being a Republican right now. Nobody's giving you shit the way you talk. That's dangerous, because that's the devil, being a Republican. But and I should have a right to say that, and not have like some Republican then shame me, be like, yeah, you know, you're misrepresenting me, calling me the devil. I'd be like, all right, fuck, I think you're the devil, you know. Um but the thing that worries me is, well, okay, so with, I don't mean this to be a rant on social media or anything, but it does follow the same trend that happened to underground papers. And so that is, if I have any value in keeping those things around, um, it's that you can see that predictable trend with people. Is that Rolling Stone is a great example. It becomes one thing and it defines how it looks, right? So Rolling Stone said, no, it's a glossy paper. It's got all these fucking photographs, very expensive photographs, and it's got all this advertising. So you're not going to be able to make a Rolling Stone, kid. You know, you can make a zine, which was the natural organic shift from underground papers, and that was awesome. The zine movement was incredible. But
that really popped off like in the 80s. Yeah.
yeah, 80s, 90s, but the same thing is like now you can get famous online. You can become an influencer. You can
Yeah.
become a 9-year-old motherfucking influencer. You have no life experience and you're a fucking influencer. You have no ideas, but you're like, I don't know, you got a nice ass or something, or you put on clothes, or you're like trying on this balm. You're suddenly a content creator. They've ruined the word content creator.
Mhm.
You know, they've ruined the concept of influence. It's the same way the 80s destroyed the word awesome. It was like awesome. Awesome's a pretty magnificent word,
It's
right?
a wonderful word. I
Yeah,
still use it
radical is
to
an
this
all.
day.
Yeah, radical is a great word. Radical, to be radicalized is like exciting. But no, it's just, you know, surf people like destroyed radical. I don't know where I'm going with that. But with Rolling Stone, it basically killed the paper, because,
Mhm.
and that's what social media has done. It's killed the internet. It's like, no, the internet is a stream of shit with a bunch of like buttons, a bunch of view counters, and it's one fucking, you know, constant sewage of thing. You're never going to spend like a day at a website enjoying this private bookstore of information, you know.
Not anymore.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was good while it lasted. I was one of the first websites in. I'll be one of the last ones out. But and I refuse to redesign it too. Fucking deal with it. Go to my website, figure it out, you know.
Well, speaking of websites, man, let's get into what you did with the Realist, because that is
Yeah.
amazing. Because during the writing of my book about Wilson, having the whole
Oh yeah. Negative thinking.
library right there
Yeah.
on the web, like so amazingly accessible, and it looks so cool. Like the design of the website looked cool. It really grabbed felt like that era, you know.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Yeah. In fact, that was the goal. So I also wanted to read it. And so that was the only way that I would be able to read every issue of The Realist, is if I was scanning it in and checking it out and everything. And I didn't even know. So I only wanted one thing from The Realist, and that was to get Paul's okay to put the Disney orgy image up. I wanted that on the web, which is issue 74 of The Realist, and it's Wally Wood's depiction of all the Disney characters having sex. It's a very famous image.
Speaking of Tijuana Bible.
Yeah, it is. It is the Tijuana Bible. Well,
Mhm.
also artist for EC Comics, also definite badass. There are a couple of comic book badasses. He's one of them.
That's awesome.
And I wanted very much to put that up. And I was, you know, the thing with the Disneyland Memorial Orgy is that if somebody puts it up right now, Disney can come after them. But if
Wow.
Paul wanted to put it up where they ignored suing him over it because they didn't want to cause attention to it. So Paul basically, through lapse of time, or um, he was able, statute of limitations, he was able to quasi own that copyright on that without Disney being able to give him shit. So I was interested in adding that to the web. There's a couple things that I've added to the web that I think have really contributed well to culture. which makes me suspicious of, you know, a 17-year-old content creator or something, you know, or whatever, where I'm like, well, prove it, man.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just don't fucking, yeah, let time, don't, okay, if you really care about your fucking ideas on the web, don't put your face on it. I don't care about how you look. Just put your fucking work up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But people, I don't know. That's where I get cranky. And I bet you if we have a recap interview in like 5-10 years, I'll be even more, I'll be two things, more pissed off about it and more right. You know, we'll be this will be brought to us by Colgate, you know, or some weird kind of thing. Like we won't even be able to communicate on Zoom without ads coming by.
Oh,
But
lovely.
yeah, look forward to it. Your music is
Nice.
going to be, yeah, you have your music is going to have like jingles in it, where it's like, you
I don't know.
know,
My music has gotten taken down by YouTube. I've had 2 videos taken down by YouTube so far.
good job
Yeah. Yeah. One was,
for like some streaming trap, and basically like you have content that you're looping in there or something like that,
well,
or
I took a lot of found footage for the videos,
that's
right?
it.
So, and but it was like one was it was too violent. It was too much violent imagery at one time. And it
Yeah.
was you know, I sent a video sampled like a Cronenberg movie, Sylvester Stallone Over the Top. That's his arm wrestling movie.
Oh yeah.
Pretty classic.
He breaks a guy's arm when he's, or is that the one where like an arm gets broken during like
That's
a,
actually Cronenberg the Fly, another arm wrestling moment.
oh yeah.
Arm wrestling seems to be a theme in this. But yeah, they took that down. They said it was up there for like 8 years. And
DMCA is well, 8 years. You should by statute of limitations been able to, like, they didn't catch it,
yeah,
but
they
like
had they were
that law doesn't exist.
not anymore, man. Then that one was about, well, one of them
Sucks.
was about, one of the songs was about like the other video they took down was about the phenomenon of how the FBI has set up patsies for utilizing confidential informants to set up patsies for, you know, terror campaigns or whatever, or
Sure.
bombing. So the 1993 World Trade Center bombing was actually all kind of set up by a confidential informant who, and a bunch of FBI guys. And then the last minute, the confidential informant called the FBI and was like, "You guys should probably stop this. They're actually going to really do this." And
Wow.
they let it. Well, I don't want to say they let it happen or whatever, but things happened. And 1993, the World Trade Center did get bombed, you know. And there was a great book I kind of based the whole video around. It was this book called The Terror Factory, and it's kind of all about how the one way that the FBI has maintained its budgets for counterterrorism has been to sort of, you know, keep the kettle hot. And you know, it happened a lot with a lot of
Yeah.
Muslim kids during the early, you know, the tens of the 2000s, you know, like when that became the huge phenomenon, the Muslim terrorist extremist, you know, a lot of people got set up by confidential informants, you know. And I made the argument in the video that they were doing it to just justify like bloated budgets, you know. And
Yeah,
but
why not?
YouTube, it was an awesome video, man. Like I sampled like a video sampled Die Hard, you know. Like the video
Well, I mean,
was
yeah, your
great.
references are unfortunately probably protected by a lot of money, so that does suck. That sucks.
They
Though
took
that
that one down.
fair use though suggests that you should be able to use that stuff.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
took it, but it was very, it was, the timing was interesting because it had been up for like a number of years, but and the whole subject matter was that. I mean, it was a really, it was rooted in a radical kind of critique of what had actually happened, right? But it was all around the time of kind of the January 6th stuff.
Yeah.
And when it came out that the governor of Michigan, that the whole plot of these guys to kidnap her that got foiled, that there was a number of FBI guys in on that, you know. So it touched on these uncomfortable things, but that was the music I came up on. Like people who would just, you know, from Zach De La Rocha to freaking Joe Strummer to all of punk rock to all of hip hop, it would be like point the finger and make a song. But yeah, now it's gone. It's off of YouTube. You can't
And
watch
you
it.
know, I'm one, I'm sorry that happened to you, and two, I bet
Thanks, man.
you and it's awesome that it was up for a while, and I bet you and somebody who's learned from your work or is whatever, they're going to be hesitant to like go full blast on something because it might get pulled down by Google, you know.
Maybe.
And so it's like, versus putting it into a cassette and putting it into mail order and you just send it around. Maybe it's going to take forever to fucking like get that tape into people's hands or DVD or whatever. But there's no way that somebody could press a button and make their DVD at their house disappear. But they can from the streaming server. Certainly they can from their Dropbox account and whatever. I mean, there's a limitation in terms of like I know for a fact that I've gotten busted on like certain streaming services for using any just I'm so nervous to even mention that, but like
Right, I know.
like I don't want to mention, yeah, but I've gotten stuff
Yeah.
for like for sampling incorrectly, and it changes the creative process because you want those hits and stuff, and it's very stupid. It's unfortunate, but like yeah, I mean, like Google is more is the FCC is harmless compared to Google now. The FCC would just fine you or something, but Google can like demonetize you. Like I got friends who have a really successful channel and that's their fucking life. They gotta fucking smile and for lack of I mean, this is probably an off-color way of saying it, but they got to be like, hey Manny, they got to fucking Al Jolson themselves like into a big grin, and it's I don't know. I don't mean to sound so upset because I'm actually very proud of the work I do. I'm very
Yeah,
happy.
it's
I'm
great
very
work.
happy with the world too. The world is pretty beautiful.
But
But
you raise very poignant critiques though of where it is at in terms of like the communication technologies that we use, because you're very tuned into that, like the mediums that have been used to move the message along. Like you discovered the photocopy machine,
oh my
like
god, yeah,
the part of the underground press movement was like the lithograph revolution, that now
yeah,
there were these new printing machines and paper available that could print these things up quicker and get the message out there, and it all seemed to coalesce. Like some of these counterculture people, even Robert Anton Wilson, a bit of a techno utopianist, maybe a lot of a techno utopianist, this thought that there would be this moment where all this decentralized information being shared would take down the borders and the boundaries, and there would be equal footing, and it would help bring about an egalitarian
right.
situation. But like it's become the turn in the media has kind of this creeping turnkey totalitarianism about it, right?
Yeah,
It's a very scary moment.
I completely agree with you. I see a timer here at 5 minutes. Let's see if I
Right.
wait. So let me quickly. Okay, I'm gonna focus.
Awesome.
One, the thing with the realist that was terrific was finding all the different things that were important to people that were in those issues. And the first community that came to me was the Robert Anton Wilson people, once they found out that I was going to do all these issues, because all that negative thinking stuff, those I'm so glad it helped you, and I'm glad that you responded to it in the way that it was intended, to actually not digitize, not like copy the text and just represent it in a different way. No, I wanted it to look like the pages. And it was really cool to get to go through those things with Paul for in time, and then get to know Paul in a really direct way, and just learn sort of what it is to know one of those people, and that was an amazing experience. And I do wonder what Robert Anton Wilson would think of this period, but it's I don't know. It took a long time to get those issues up, and it was a wonderful experience. I keep on wanting to elaborate more, but yeah, I mean, it took like 4 years.
Wow.
I had to find every fucking issue. Paul had a very limited amount of the early issues, and I don't know. There was a communication style, the way that he wrote an email, that was absolutely unique, in a way to learn something. And so I think there's a certain measure of ageism in the world right now, where people don't want to learn from old people. It's like the only prejudice that people hate. It's like the only prejudice that isn't really being checked right now in terms of like this stuff is age, you know.
Mm.
And if you were to tell like somebody who's like really satisfied about the canceling that they're doing to somebody, you're going to wake up you know, tomorrow, 82, unable to get an erection, or like with a sagging female body or whatever, they would be like, they wouldn't go, hey, you defend old people. They would immediately be like, oh, that's fucking scary. Don't do that.
Yeah, they're
It's
not
because
going to have those perky McCain tits.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You ain't gonna get those from me. And so, I mean, people get prejudice. That's their prejudice is age. And so for me, it's like the Realist, John Wilcock. I got to work with Evergreen Review with Barney Rossett. These people are fucking like, they created this world. And so it's been, but people are, you become invisible the older you get. And so I think, I don't know, but you keep you keep it in queue, you keep it in the air that this stuff exists. And so I got the Realist out, and it had I'll give you a funny gotcha. You mentioned January 6th. A lot of alt-right people read the Realist that I put online. And in fact, a lot of alt-right news sources came from people who suddenly I'm forgetting his fucking name. I don't care. He can die. He died.
We don't need to know his name.
Yeah. Anyway, it came out being like, I'm a fan of Abby Hoffman. And and Paul Krassner ended up interviewing him for Playboy right before he died. And he was like, told him how much he loved the website, the Realist thing. And so I was like, well, great. So, okay. I kind of gave partial access and birth to the alt-right, but that's what happens when you send an idea out. That's what happens when your side is like rejecting intentionally offensive. The Realist was intentionally offensive. It was playfully offensive. If you fell for it, it was a success, and it played with tropes and all these other things.
They were trolling in a way.
Yeah, totally trolling, like King trolling, King troll.